Great people who weren't good people. Some of the world's most celebrated figures had personal lives and behaviors that were, let's just say, far from admirable. Let's take a look at a few icons whose legacies are a bit more complicated than they first appear. Let's start with a name synonymous with childhood whimsy: Dr. Seuss. Behind the colorful rhymes and imaginative creatures was Theodore Geisel, a man whose personal choices were much darker than his books. During his first marriage, while his wife Helen was battling both a serious illness and deep depression, Geisel found comfort not in standing by her side, but in someone else's arms. That affair eventually led Helen to take her own life after leaving behind a heart-wrenching note. And Geisel? He married the woman he'd been cheating with less than a year later. But the questionable decisions didn't stop at his love life. Before he was teaching kids about the Lorax and the value of a person's worth, Geisel worked as a political cartoonist during World War II. Many of his illustrations were outright racist, especially against Japanese Americans, so much so that he even voiced support for the internment camps. It's a jarring contrast to the man who later penned tales about equality and rejecting discrimination. Like the Sneetches. So was it a change of heart or just a rebrand? Hard to say, but knowing this makes Horton Hears a Who feel a bit different, doesn't it? Now, on to Albert Einstein, the guy who brought us E equals MC squared and cracked open the universe's deepest secrets. But when it came to relationships, he wasn't exactly a role model. His first wife, Mileva Maric, was a physicist herself, and some historians argue she may have played a major role in Einstein's early theories. And yet, her name never made it onto the research papers or the awards. She was more like his unpaid assistant than a respected partner. And as their marriage fell apart, Einstein didn't try to mend things. He handed Mileva a list of rules she had to follow if she wanted to stay with him. These demands included things like keeping his study clean and not expecting physical affection. Romance, right? Eventually, Mileva left, and Einstein went on to marry his cousin, Elsa. But monogamy still wasn't on the agenda. He had numerous affairs during that marriage too, casually admitting to them in letters. He may have been a scientific genius, but emotionally, that's a whole other equation. Then there's Winston Churchill, a titan of history often remembered as the indomitable British Prime Minister who stood firm against Nazi Germany. His speeches and leadership were undeniably critical to the Allied victory in World War II. But dig deeper and the story gets more uncomfortable. During the 1943 Bengal famine, millions in India starved. Churchill had the means to help. He controlled food supplies. But instead, he diverted resources to Europe and let grain rot in ports. His excuse? He blamed the famine on the local population, saying they were breeding like rabbits. Earlier in his career, Churchill also used military force against coal miners striking for better wages in Tonypandy, Wales in 1910. These weren't rioters, just workers trying to survive. Sending in troops led to violence that left a lasting scar on the community. And let's not overlook the 1945 bombing of Dresden, which Churchill approved. Tens of thousands of civilians died, and many historians argue it had little strategic value. It seemed more like vengeance than wartime necessity. So yes, Churchill helped save a nation, but he also made decisions that caused immense suffering. History tends to highlight the heroics and gloss over the harm. Now, let's talk about Thomas Edison. Often praised as one of the greatest inventors of all time, the mind behind the light bulb, phonograph, and early cinema. But the truth? Edison was more of a master marketer than a lone genius. Take the light bulb, for instance. He didn't invent it, he refined an idea that already existed and secured the patent. The real pioneers, like Joseph Swan, were largely forgotten in the process. And then there's the legendary rivalry with Nikola Tesla. Tesla once worked for Edison and was promised a hefty reward, $50,000, for solving one of Edison's technical problems. Tesla delivered. Edison laughed it off, calling the offer a joke. Imagine working tirelessly only to be told it was all just for fun. But it gets worse. When Tesla pushed forward with alternating current, AC electricity, superior to Edison's direct current, DC, Edison launched a smear campaign. He even publicly electrocuted animals to make AC seem dangerous. That's not innovation, that's propaganda. Mother Teresa's name is practically synonymous with kindness, charity, and selflessness. She dedicated her life to helping the poor and sick in Calcutta, India. And for many, she's a symbol of pure altruism. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work, and her canonization as a saint by the Catholic Church only solidified her place as an icon of humanitarianism. But here's where things get tricky. Beneath that saintly image, there's been a lot of criticism, and it's pretty hard to ignore once you look deeper. Mother Teresa's primary focus wasn't necessarily on providing the best medical care, but rather on promoting spiritual salvation. Many of the facilities she ran were reported to have unhygienic conditions, and patients often didn't receive the proper medical attention they needed. She was very devout in her Catholic faith and believed that suffering had a divine purpose. This meant that, in many cases, she rejected the use of certain medical treatments, even when they could have saved lives. Instead of easing suffering, she often glorified it. Critics argue that Mother Teresa was more focused on converting people to Catholicism than actually improving their quality of life. While her intentions might have been good, the long-term impact of her actions is still widely debated. Some say she left people in worse conditions than she found them. It's a sad reality that even the most well-meaning people can sometimes do more harm than good. John Lennon, the guy who sang about peace and love, the voice behind the legendary Beatles, and the man who wrote some of the most iconic songs ever made. He's often seen as a symbol of the counterculture movement, someone who stood for peace, unity, and anti-establishment ideals. But like a lot of public figures, Lennon's personal life was a lot messier than the image he cultivated. The truth is, the guy wasn't exactly the model of peace and love that his music might suggest. Lennon had a notorious history of being abusive towards women. He admitted to hitting women during his younger years, and that's something he later publicly confessed to. His relationship with his first wife, Cynthia Lennon, was filled with infidelity and emotional neglect. He also wasn't the greatest father to his son, Julian. Lennon's personal life is full of contradictions. While he was singing songs about peace, he was treating the women in his life with disrespect and neglecting his responsibilities as a father. Sure, he did a lot for peace, but he wasn't exactly a role model for the kind of love and harmony he preached. Lennon's life reminds us that even the most celebrated figures in history can have flaws that we can't ignore. Mahatma Gandhi, the man who led India to independence from British rule through nonviolent resistance, is often hailed as one of the greatest champions of peace and equality in modern history. His philosophy of satyagraha, nonviolent civil disobedience, has inspired countless movements for social justice around the world. But as much as he's celebrated for his advocacy of peaceful protest, Gandhi's personal views and actions often clash with the image of the perfect moral leader. For starters, Gandhi had some seriously racist views early in his life. He referred to Africans as savages and expressed deeply derogatory opinions about them, particularly during his time in South Africa. This is the same man who later became a champion of nonviolence and equality. It doesn't exactly add up, right? But there's more. Gandhi's treatment of women, especially in his later years, is also a cause for concern. He believed in celibacy and went so far as to experiment with his own version of self-control, including sleeping next to young, naked girls. This is incredibly disturbing when you dig into it. Despite these flaws, Gandhi's commitment to nonviolent resistance did inspire millions, and his work undeniably contributed to India's independence. But it's clear that the man was far from perfect, and his personal contradictions make it difficult to separate the hero from the man. Steve Jobs, an icon in the world of technology, a visionary who helped create the Apple empire and the guy behind some of the most innovative products of our time, like the iPhone, iPad, and MacBook. We all know him as the genius who revolutionized personal computing, but when you take a closer look at his personal life, you start to realize that Jobs was far from the perfect leader everyone makes him out to be. For one, Jobs wasn't exactly known for being kind or generous. He was ruthless when it came to business. He cheated his co-founder, Steve Wozniak, out of fair compensation, and he often treated employees with little respect, seeing them more as tools than people. Jobs also wasn't the best father. He refused to pay child support for his daughter, Lisa, and even initially denied paternity until a DNA test proved he was the father. On top of that, Jobs was known for his narcissistic behavior, like parking in handicapped spots and driving around without a license plate, as if the rules didn't apply to him. While he was undoubtedly a genius in the tech world, his personal flaws, lack of empathy, and selfish tendencies make it hard to fully idolize him. He might have created a tech empire, but he did it with a trail of broken relationships and ethical shortcuts. Pablo Picasso is arguably the most famous artist of the 20th century, known for his groundbreaking work in Cubism and his role in shaping modern art. His legacy in the art world is undeniable, and his paintings continue to fetch millions of dollars. But let's not sugarcoat it. Picasso was a pretty awful person, especially when it came to his treatment of women. Picasso was an infamous womanizer who had numerous affairs throughout his life. He treated the women around him like mere muses, often emotionally destroying them before moving on to the next one. His relationships were manipulative and toxic, and he seemed to view women only as tools to fuel his creativity. Picasso's own words and actions show that he had little regard for the women he claimed to love. His first wife, Olga Khokhlova, and his mistress, Dora Maar, both suffered emotional and physical abuse during their relationships with him. So, while Picasso's art changed the world, his personal life and treatment of women cast a shadow over his legacy. Can we separate his genius from his toxic behavior? Or does his art also have to carry the weight of his personal flaws? Che Guevara has been immortalized as a revolutionary hero, a symbol of resistance and rebellion against imperialism. His image is iconic, from the posters in bedrooms to the t-shirts you see in every tourist shop. But if you dig into the history behind this legendary figure, things start to get a little darker. Guevara was responsible for overseeing executions and imprisonments of people he deemed enemies of the revolution. He helped run forced labor camps for people who opposed the Cuban government and had a pretty extreme view of how to deal with dissent. He also wasn't exactly progressive when it came to race and sexuality. Guevara made derogatory comments about Mexicans, black people, and gay people, showing a side of him that doesn't fit with the idealized image of a revolutionary for the oppressed. And ironically, the same guy who fought against capitalism and imperialism has had his image commercialized to the point where it's used to sell everything from coffee mugs to clothing. It's a strange twist. Che Guevara, the revolutionary, turned into a brand, his face plastered on merchandise, while his more troubling actions are overlooked. So, while Guevara did stand for a cause, his legacy is a complicated one, full of contradictions that are hard to ignore. YouTube thinks you will like this video next, so make sure you click subscribe.